If like me you've got plants and pets, then this video is for you. While it's great to have both, sometimes it can be challenging to have them together. So plants are fantastic for our well-being, but they can cause harm to our pets depending on how they're interacted with. So if they are maybe broken and pets come into contact with the sap, or maybe even try and eat them, then plants can contain substances that will cause harm. So I'm going to run through a list of those possible substances and the plants that we might need to be aware of, so we can either avoid them or at least keep them out of reach of our pets to make sure that our pets stay safe. While I was researching the video, I did go down a bit of a biochemistry rabbit hole, learning about the different substances in the plants and how they can impact our pets. So it's interesting to see there are quite a few common ones that run across the plants that I'll talk about today, plus a few specific ones for certain plants. This is only a high level overview. I'm not a biochemist, so this is just from what I've been researching, but you can also do your own research, take some of the terms that I'm talking about, find information from reputable sources, and then at least that way we can improve our knowledge and know which plants we should keep away from our pets. So the first substance and the most popular one across the plants that I'm talking about today, plus I'm sure one that you've heard of before, are insoluble calcium oxalate crystals. So these come in many different forms. Not all of them are necessarily harmful, depending on the shape that they take. They're found in a huge amount of plants, including vegetables that we eat, so they obviously contain the safer shaped crystals that we can ingest. But the ones that we're looking at today in the plants that are harmful are because they contain needle shape or rapide shaped crystals, and the little crystals are in the cells of the plant. When the plant is eaten, the cells eject or propel those needle-shaped crystals out into the mouth and potentially the esophagus and respiratory tract of whatever is eating them, hence where the harm is caused. So the different symptoms that can arise from that are of course pain, maybe numbness sometimes, drooling, swelling and irritation of the general local area. In more severe cases, depending on how far back it's gone and the reaction, it can cause vomiting and breathing difficulties. So the second group of substances are saponins, and these come in many different forms. Many of them are actually beneficial or have beneficial properties, so antifungal, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory for example, and have medicinal uses, but the ones that we're looking at are the ones that have potentially ill effects for our pets, particularly depending on how much they've ingested. So the ill effects that come from saponins are gastrointestinal, usually. They're the most common, so stomach upset like diarrhea and vomiting. They can affect pets' moods, so cause depression, for example, and in some cases they can be hemolytic and damage blood cells, where they can leave hemoglobin from red blood cells just floating freely in the bloodstream, and over time this can cause anemia. So it's really important that we obviously are aware of what plants contain saponins and make sure our pets aren't eating them. So the third group of substances are proteolytic enzymes, and just like the saponins, they come in many different varieties and have many beneficial uses too, so they're used in healthcare and medicinal treatments, but the ones we'll be looking at are the ones that can cause harm if they're ingested from the plants that we've got here today. So the main issue they cause are gastrointestinal issues, so diarrhea and vomiting, but they can work with other substances to cause greater effects. So for example, if they work with calcium oxalate crystals, they can actually cause more inflammation and cause a greater reaction and draw that reaction out. So it's really important to know what are in our different plants, if they contain more than one harmful substance, and just how severe certain reactions can be, just how safe are those plants. So the next group of substances are sorellins, and these cause photosensitivity or light sensitivity. The interesting thing about these are they can take effect whether they are ingested or if they're topical. So if a pet comes into contact with sap from the plant, for example, it can cause a local reaction. The particular substance needs the light to activate it, so when they go out in the sun, for example, that's what they're more sensitive to, and then that can cause the ill effects such as irritation of the skin, increased chance and severity of sunburn, and possibly even dermatitis. So where this has been topical, then it would be a local reaction, but if it's been eaten, for example, then this can cause an effect on the whole body. It can even affect the eyes and increase the photosensitivity of the eyes, and increase the chances of damage to the eyes depending on the exposure to the substance and light levels. So it's really important to look out for these, as well as not just for pets but also for us when we're handling plants. We don't want to get any on our skin and potentially cause any burns or irritation. So the last one are anthropinones, and these ones are I think only in one of the plants I've got here today, but these also have medicinal uses just like some of the other substances that I've mentioned today. These are sometimes used for laxative purposes, for medicinal uses, so you can guess what the ill effects are going to be if a pet decides to eat a plant with anthropinones. They can also be purgative too, so general gastrointestinal issues such as diarrhea and vomiting. So now I'll run through each of the plants in alphabetical order, and I'll highlight which of the harmful substances are in each plant. I'll try and run through these quite quickly as there's quite a few to get through. Some of them may surprise you as they are quite common houseplants, so you might already have some of these in your collection already. So I've brought back this huge Aglaonema from the start of the video, and Aglaonemas actually contain calcium oxalate crystals, so if ingested will cause that reaction in the mouth, esophagus and airways. So the next ones are alocasias, and just like Aglaonemas, alocasias contain the calcium oxalate crystals too. I'm sure you'll recognise this one. This one is aloe vera, and while it's got many beneficial properties for us, it's very harmful to pets. So this actually has two harmful properties in it. This one has the anthropinones that I mentioned last, which cause the gastrointestinal upset, as well as saponins. So while that might exacerbate the gastrointestinal upset, that can also have an impact on their mood, and in more severe cases, issues with the blood and anemia. So definitely want to keep away from pets. This caladium only has a few leaves, but thankfully they've been growing towards the light, so it makes it easier to hold towards the camera, but hopefully it does develop some more leaves through the growing season. So these contain calcium oxalate crystals, but the sap can also be quite an irritant if it gets on your skin or pet skin. I'm not sure what the substance is that causes that irritation, but just bear that in mind. That's an additional thing to look out for with caladiums. So the next one is Dieffenbachia, or commonly known as the dumb cone, because of the reaction that it causes if it's ingested. This actually contains two harmful substances, the calcium oxalate crystals and the proteolytic enzymes. And just like I was describing in the substances overview, this is where the proteolytic enzymes actually work in conjunction with the oxalate crystals, calcium oxalate crystals, to enhance the ill effects that they have. So it increases the inflammation, draws out the reaction. So this is potentially a much more harmful plant. So this next one, I've just given this a quick dust, but it needs a better job, so I'll do that after the video. This one is a Dracena, so this is a variety of Dracena fragrans, and you've also got the thinner leaf variety, the Dracena marginata. They're both in the same boat, they both contain saponins, so they will cause that gastrointestinal upset, possibly concerns with mood and issues with blood and anemia in more severe cases. So this one is one of the most common houseplants that you'll find. I'm sure you've got one of these in your collection if you do like houseplants. This is the Epipremnum aureum, or golden pothos, and all varieties of this contain calcium oxalate crystals, so could be harmful if eaten by any pets. So this next one's a little bit different. This is a type of ficus. I'm not sure 100% of the variety of this, but different varieties of ficus can cause harm to our pets. They're commonly known as fig trees in their different variety names, different fig variety names, and there is such a thing as fig poisoning from pets that have encountered these plants or ingested them. So they contain a number of different harmful substances, phycin, which is a proteolytic enzyme, and ficusin, which is a sorellin. So they can cause effects if they are ingested, but also topically from contact if pets come into contact with the sap, or even if we do. As we mentioned, the sorellin can cause photosensitivity to the local area, so cause increased likelihood of burning, sunburn for example, and severity, irritation, dermatitis. If ingested, that obviously has an effect on the wider body, but then also the proteolytic enzyme, the phycin, can cause gastrointestinal upset as well. So this one, again, not a very nice plant to encounter either the sap or ingest. So for this next one, I'm not going to pick this up as it's quite a large plant in a very heavy pot. So this, as I'm sure you'll recognise, is the Monstera deliciosa, a very common house plant. I'm sure we've all got one in our collection. This one contains calcium oxalate crystals, so can cause those nasty reactions in the mouth, esophagus and airways. So this next one, again, is another popular type of plant, and one with so many different varieties, you've probably got multiples of these in your houseplant collection. So these are philodendrons, and this one I've got here is a philodendron pink. As you can see, the wonderful colour on it. So if you've not seen these plants before, I've actually got a separate video all about the philodendron Birkin pink on my channel, so you can check that out next if you look on the channel for it. So philodendrons actually contain the calcium oxalate crystals, so just like the Monstera and many of the other plants that we've mentioned today, have that nasty reaction if ingested. So I brought the Sansevieria back from earlier in the video, and my previous video was all about Sansevierias, how to care for them and how to propagate them, so you can find that on the channel if you'd like to watch that next. So these have recently been reclassified as Dracena, and we did talk about those earlier. So these share the same harmful substance as Dracena, which are saponins. So again, these will cause that gastrointestinal discomfort, issues with mood, issues with blood and potentially anemia in more severe cases. So this next one is Syndapsis, and just like the epipremnums we spoke about earlier, these are commonly referred to as pothos plants too. They also share the same harmful substance as epipremnums, and in fairness, many of the other plants we've spoken about today in this lineup. So these have the insoluble calcium oxalate crystals, so will cause that nasty reaction in the mouth and potentially beyond, depending on how much has been ingested. So this next one is one of my favourite varieties of Syngonium. This is the Syngonium Red Arrow. As you can see, those wonderful deep red backs of the leaves there. And this grows a little bit differently to other Syngoniums too, in that it looks almost like a pothos, the way that it vines off quite early on. However, this is representing all Syngoniums here for the purposes of this video, and just like the pothos that we spoke about earlier, these have the same harmful substance, so the insoluble calcium oxalate crystals, so these will have the same harmful reaction. Now this next one doesn't quite fit in the shot, so I'll hold it back as far as I can so you can see these wonderful dark glossy black leaves. This is the ZZ Raven, but the ZZ plant in general contains the insoluble calcium oxalate crystals, so they will have the same reaction to many of the other plants that we've spoken today that contain those crystals. Now it is worth noting there are different factors that can affect how those substances work, so the type of animal, the size of animal, and how much of the plant has been ingested. Also, much of the research and reports on plant toxicity or the harmfulness of plants is based on larger animals such as cats, dogs and horses. So if you've got any other animals outside of that, maybe birds, reptiles, smaller animals, make sure that you double check, do some research, find out what is suitable for them. If you need to use this as a starter guide, this could be a good starter guide just to check what plants could be harmful and what ones you might want to avoid. With anything like this, obviously if in doubt, leave it out, keep it out of reach or avoid it altogether. I hope you never experience your pets having a harmful reaction to ingesting any plant material, but if you do, seek veterinary advice as soon as possible. Now I do have a previous video all about pet safe plants which I'll link at the end if you'd like to watch that next, then you can check what plants might be suitable for your collection and what should be safe for your animals. I'll also link some further information in the description below, so you can do your own research if you wish to see what other plant varieties might also be safe or not safe for pets. If you have found this video interesting and useful, then please consider subscribing as I'll have new videos every week, usually on a Sunday. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments below and I'll respond to everyone. As always, thank you for watching Grow Your Wellbeing.